Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Monday, December 7th, and this is virtual lunch number 190. Sachin Bansal is our guest. He's now the general counsel of a company called Security Scorecard, but mostly he's a stand-up comedian.
Contrary to what my fellow comedians, they actually tease me. One of them told me after a show, he was like, "You don't look like a comedian. You look like a B-list Bollywood porn actor." I didn't know what to say. I was like, "You look cute too." No, so I've been living a life like Batman and Bruce Wayne, except without the fame, the money, the cool car, the women, like everything else, though we're very similar. It's a double life. I'm part-time comedian, full-time lawyer. If you ask people at my company, they'll tell you that I'm mediocre at both. I've had a varied career where I've been at two large law firms, one mid-sized firm, was running litigation for an investment bank. And then for the last year and change, I've been general counsel for a growing tech company based here in New York City. Started learning comedy through the Comedy Cellar about 7 years ago. That's where I got trained. And I've been on stage every week almost for a number of years performing. Until the pandemic hit, I was running an independent off-Broadway show. It was in East Village, then it moved to the Lower East Side, and we had everybody from Jim Gaffigan, Hasan Minhaj, Nikki Glazer, Judah Friedlander, the list goes on of drop-ins. We asked Ari Kaplan, by the way, he was not available whenever we tried to book him. Instead, Jim Gaffigan was like, "Such, I'll do it." And I was like, "Guess I could have you on the show. I'd rather have Ari."
I hear that a lot. Every day at noon Eastern, you can be on the virtual lunch. But
there are, believe it or not, stand-up comedy classes. I didn't think that you could actually learn stand-up through a class. It's a workshop, and I stumbled upon it. I think I was just working late one night and trying to procrastinate on whatever law firm related work I should have been doing at 1 a.m. and stumbled upon the classes section on the Comedy Cellar website, probably my number one favorite club in the world. I was like blown away that, wow, there's actually these classes. I made one of these impulsive decisions to like fork over hundreds of bucks right on the spot and signed up. And the next thing I knew, I'm spending Tuesday night in like some studio in Manhattan with 10 other people of varying backgrounds and careers and aspirations. And we're basically making fun of each other. We're writing jokes. Our teacher, who's been teaching for like forever, is a guy named Rick Chrome. He's the most famous comedian that's not famous in the sense that he started performing with Chris Rock, Colin Quinn. He's helped start the Comedy Cellar almost 30 years ago. And everybody that he was performing with has become famous except for himself. I then morphed from classes to having a personal comedy trainer. So instead of making me do push-ups, it makes me write jokes. People will say, "I don't want to be picked on." If you don't want comedians talking to you, don't sit in the front row or the first two rows. When you're on stage, the lights are so bright. And I don't think the audience realizes. And usually you really cannot see people's faces in most clubs beyond the first couple rows. Like, people are sitting there, but you can't really see them. And then I have to do a lot of Zoom comedy shows, which eats at my soul just one thing at a time. It's really quite depressing. It's odd. There hasn't been really a choice because the only in-person stuff you could do is outdoors. And I've done a lot of that. And you get material, like everybody has a million thoughts going through their head. And you get material from all different sources. You can certainly talk about your significant other and the quirks that they have. I talk about my South Asian parents. They would get really upset when I got a B+ in high school. Sachin, B+? No. We did not come to this country for you to get B+. And I'd be like, well, I'm born here, so I just have to pass. And I've talked about love, relationships. It runs the gamut. You get material, all inspirations. I do carry around a little notebook. You can write stuff in your phone, but nothing like the feeling of writing something by hand. Every single person you will talk to, though, has a different way of creating material. You bring your whole self to work. As you can imagine, an investment bank, very different environment than a tech company. My bank had me do like a outside business activity disclosure, wanted to sort of make sure that I wasn't like talking about Wall Street and investment bankers, whereas my like tech company has literally featured me in customer events that we've done. We've done comedy events both on Zoom and also at a golf course. You guys can see how great my comedy career is going because I am telling jokes outside underneath a tent for free. I always want to make sure people take me seriously. bring that executive kind of presence to any room that I'm in. But I find that the comedic kind of background that I have has been super helpful because we've all been in those meetings where it can get a little tense and you can feel that tension a little bit in the room. If it's a small meeting of a few people, I sometimes will diffuse tension a little bit by saying something. My kind of takeaway tip to all of you is find a way over the next week to see if you can lower the temperature. It doesn't have to be the most wittiest, but just something soft. You do this all the time in your daily life. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We have to say something that's going to like be a crowd roarer. I think the last thing I'll just say on this topic is I try to be careful about putting jokes in email because I don't think it can translate as well. How would you like it if that was screenshotted and it went viral on Twitter? There is definitely this cancel culture vibe, right? Where you can't say certain things. I used to have a joke in my set. You all know this is certainly going to be offensive because I'm going to say it. But I would say, look, I would talk about dating apps and I'd say, there's a new Indian dating app I'm going to create. It's where her parents swipe right on his parents and boom, it is a match. Done. Some of you are probably thinking, well, this guy's been doing comedy for 8 years. Seems like he's been doing it for 6 months. No. Look, a lot of the material, you got to make it sound as if it's not rehearsed. It's not scripted. Jerry Seinfeld says, it took me a year to perfect a joke about a Pop-Tart. And it was a one-line joke. You're constantly revising your material. After my sets, I actually go back to my material and I'm like, I've said this one line in my bit and it doesn't seem to kind of resonate. And so I'll take it out. I do think that you got to think on your feet a little bit. Every comedian has some different styles to it. And I like to try to incorporate a little bit of something that seems more improvised. So people don't think I'm just reciting like a bunch of lines that I memorized. If you're at a bar and you're watching a boxing match on TV, if two people in the bar start fighting, you're going to start watching that fight. You're not going to care about the fight on the TV. And it's sort of the same thing. Like if I'm kind of doing my set, but then a couple people start chatting, I might sort of initially be like, what are you all kind of chatting about there? And then if it kind of keeps going and it becomes disruptive, I'll amp it up a little bit more. And I'll say, look, I know it might have been a difficult day at the French fry machine. I went to grad school for this, okay? I'm here living out my dream. I appreciate if, it sucks when you're just out having a good time and a comedy club gets built up right around you. I mean, isn't that terrible? You get the rest of the room kind of on your side and dealing. We've all been in those environments where people ruin a performance for the rest of us. We all are judged in our professions. We're evaluated. If you think you are judged in any way at your workplace, try performing with other comedians because let me tell you, they're the most judgy people on this planet. I used to show up to gigs wearing the suits and ties that I wore to work. That is not a good idea, but it is really difficult to fit in. I don't try to really talk about my work and what I do because that's a separate kind of life. The problem though is that when I now say anything to any of my friends or coworkers, they'll be like, oh, Sachin, stop doing your bits on us. And I'm just like, I'm just talking. Or they'll sometimes be like, that's really good. Like, you should use this. Like, I have this really, and I'm like, I can't use your crazy Thanksgiving grandma story in my stand-up. Like, that's 4 really practical tips that I think about every time before I go on stage. Number 1, pause. You can use pauses as very powerful ways to have your message resonate. Number 2, I just did it and I shouldn't have done it. Avoid garbage words. Yeah, right. Number 3, smile. I mean, if you're talking about something serious, then maybe don't smile. I sometimes will laugh. I'm on stage and I'll be laughing because I'm having fun. And I can tell when people kind of tense up a little bit near me. I'll give them a kind of a fist pound or something, and I'll be like, hey, just so you know, I think I'm more scared of you than you are of me. Something like that. Just to kind of relax them. That kind of goes into my last point, which is engage your audience. I try to talk to one person at a time, or if I'm making a specific point, it's that whole concept of eye contact, right? And so I'll look at people as I'm speaking. In a Zoom way, it's really, really tough because everyone's a tiny little box on the screen. I've had people tell me, go back to your country. And I say the same thing to them every time. I'm born and raised in Connecticut. Please don't make me go back to Connecticut. There's no brown people in Connecticut. When I started doing comedy, my Indian mother, I'm not kidding you, she was like, Sachin, I have one rule for you. You just got to be clean. You be clean on stage. And I was like, Mom, do not worry. I will shower every time before I go up. So I think it's a personal preference thing. I've seen people stand, but I think majority of people I've seen when they present are sitting. More important is your lighting and your camera.
Sachin Bansal, everybody.